It's official. I'd like to call to order the September 9th, 2021 meeting of Mayor and Council. For the invocation, I'd like to call on Pastor David Adams with Mount Calvary Baptist Church to lead us in prayer. You would all remain standing for the pledge after that.
Let us pray. Eternal everlasting God, our Father, Lord God, we call upon your rich and holy name, lifting up the mayor, the city manager, the members of this council, Lord, and all the leaders of the city of Valdosta. We ask that you hold them in your unchanging hands, knowing, Father, you are just a prayer away. Father, we ask that you lead and guide and direct them as they make decisions for the residents of this city, Lord, that they will do it with humility and integrity, and let them understand, Father, they are representing you, so let their yea be yea and their nay, nay, and that they understand that even though those that they are making decisions for are not in their district, they are still their neighbors, because, Lord, you told us that we should love our neighbors as ourselves. So, Father, as they look to make whatever decisions that they may have to do, let them honor you in everything that they say and do. We give you the glory, the honor, the praise, but most of all, we give you the thanksgiving, for truly it is in Christ Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to open up the evening with awards and presentations. Consideration of the September 2021 Employee of the Month. If I could get Dejanay Bland and David Frost, our Utilities Director, to join me at the front. Let David on.
Okay. Firstly, I want to say is this is my first time doing it as the official utilities director, so we couldn't have picked a better guy for me to start out with. Just want to say that when you look for an employee, you look for someone that's going to come in excited, ready to go to work, and looking and coming in with new ideas, bright ideas, and just looking to help any way he can, and having that positive attitude. DJ fits the bill to a T. We recently had one who's actually a supervisor at the water plant, had to go out for an extended period, and DJ filled in for him. There's a few projects he had to pick up on, and he did a bang-up job, and during that time period, he showed leadership skills that someone with his experience at that time typically doesn't have. He's been with the city about 8 months. He works, back up a little bit, he works on our central lines. I'm so sorry. Sorry, that was centralized, but he works with our central maintenance folks, and what they do, they're responsible for all the maintenance of the water plants, the wastewater plants, and anything that breaks down, they're going to fix it. So he had a pretty important job there for a while, filling in for that position. We just want to say thank you, DJ. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm going to pile it on here. All right. The official mayor's coin for the city of Valdosta. Put it in a nice felt bag for you. Don't try and spend it. This you can spend.
Oh.
This is a nice token from the city of Valdosta. Spend it wisely. This is your plaque. Put in your office or your space or your home, wherever you so choose. Honor you as the Employee of the Month. And this one will go in the hallways here at City Hall, and we're commemorating the fact that you're a valued employee of the city of Valdosta. I'm sure appreciate it. Thank you. stay up here and invite Chief Brian Boutwell to the front. How you doing? The Valdosta Fire Department is known for its professionalism, its top-flight service to the citizens of Valdosta as well. How about that? I memorized the first two lines as well. Chief has shown his dedication and commitment by successfully completing the process that awards the professional designation of Chief Fire Officer from the Center for Public Safety Excellence, the Commission on Professional Credentialing. They met June 1st to confer this designation on our chief. He now becomes one of 1,554 worldwide and only one of 48 in the state of Georgia. The designation program is a voluntary program that recognizes individuals who demonstrate their continued excellence in 7 measured components of experience, education, professional development, professional contributions, association membership, community involvement, and technical competence. Achieving this certification signifies Chief Boutwell his continued commitment to his career, to the fire service, and to the citizens of Valdosta. And for that, we applaud you 5 times over. Thank you. Oh, Chief, don't leave early either. I forgot I had a coin for you as well. I'll run that down. All right, Council, you've had time to review the minutes from the August 19th meeting. Is there any changes that you'd like to make? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by acclamation. We'll now move on to the item 4, public hearings. Consideration of a request to change the name of Biles Circle to Torrington Lane. Pat Collins, our city engineer, will present. Pat?
Okay, good evening. As we had discussed on Tuesday evening and looked at the maps, Mr. Jerry Stoker presented the engineering department with the request to change the name of an existing stubbed out portion of roadway known as Biles Circle within the Branch Point subdivision to Torrington Lane. If approved, the name change would eliminate the shorter stubbed out road section known as Bile Road, and it would incorporate it into the Torrington Lane, the new subdivision that's being built next door. Mr. Stoker attained all the parcel signatures that were required. There were 2 parcels on either side of the stubbed out road. He owns the other portion, and so he's met all the things that were required of him by the ordinance. And so tonight we're asking you to approve the name change from Biles Road to Torrington Lane. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Council, any questions for Pat? Pat, it seems pretty cut and dry. Thank you. This is a public hearing, so if there's anybody that'd like to step forward and speak in favor of this request, we'll hear you now. I see none. Is there anybody that would like to speak out against this request? I see none. Council, I turn it over to you for action.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the proposal as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, show of hands. Unanimous. Thank you. Item B under public hearings, consideration of an ordinance for a conditional use permit for a personal care home in a residential professional zoning district as requested by Blue Right Holdings. The Planning Commission voted in favor of this 7-0, and Matt Martin, our fantastic planning and zoning man, will present. Hi.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Hi, Matt.
This one is a conditional use permit request for a personal care home at 1006 Slater Street. It is on the west side of the street. As you see on the zoning map in your packet and on the screen, most everything around here is zoned RP or CC. This is a family-sized personal care home proposed for 6 senior citizens and or disabled persons. Typically, we see these kinds of requests in traditional single-family neighborhoods, oftentimes approved to a smaller scale, but this is not the same kind of neighborhood. This was once a historic residential area. It is still in the local historic district. Former houses that were converted over to offices many, many years ago. And this one was a former professional office in a recent life, and it has 7 parking spaces on the back. So other maps in your packet include the character area designation, transitional neighborhood, that reflects the history of this area, changing from residential to that of non-residential. Aerial, you see the rooftops, historic-looking buildings, at least from the aerial review. You see a shared parking lot system in the back that is common to a lot of these properties. Site plan in your packet. No changes are being proposed to the site or to the exterior. They're simply wanting to move in and maybe some minor remodeling on the inside. Subject property looks like this from Slater Street. Still a residential appearance, residential front yard. You see the driveways on either side. There's already a handicap facility in the back for entrance. Adjacent properties to the north and south of this look very, very similar. These are former residences that too have been converted to offices. In staff's view, this is actually an ideal setting for a personal care home of this size. It gives you the best of both worlds to maximize its 6 persons in a residential setting, but not in the middle of a neighborhood where you have to worry about traffic or anything of that nature. The irony is here, it's a change of use from office to personal care home that actually reduces, in all likelihood, the amount of traffic that would be generated. Across the street directly is the one remaining residential use that is there, single-family residence that is rental property. And so with that, Planning Commission is recommending approval subject to 4 conditions, which are there in your packet. And get to the right page of mine. First condition, approval shall be granted for a state-licensed and fully compliant personal care home with up to 6 residents at the facility. No other uses allowed in RP zoning shall be allowed on the property that are in addition to the personal care home. Number 2, all parking associated with the facility shall be located on site and in the rear yard only. Number 3, there shall be no temporary signage, and permanent signs shall be limited to those which are allowed in the historic district under RP zoning and in accordance with the historic district design guidelines. And then lastly, number 4, conditional use approval shall expire after 2 years from the date of approval if no city business license has been approved for the facility by that date. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Council, any questions for Matt? Matt, thank you. This again is a public hearing. Is there anybody that'd like to speak in favor of this request? Please come forward. None. Is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition of this request? Seeing and hearing none, I'll turn it over to council for action.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we approve the request of the applicant with the 4 conditions as stated.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, show of hands. Council, thank you. Item C, consideration of an ordinance for a conditional use permit for a church facility in a single-family residential zoning district as requested by Leroy Butler Jr. Property is located at 820 Woodlawn Drive. Matt Martin will again present.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. This conditional use is for a different kind of use. It's a church facility, which sometimes we refer to as a church accessory use. It's the pastor from Woodlawn Forest Church, which is across the street to the east, a well-established large church campus. This would be an expansion to their facilities by going across the street, and they're proposing to renovate 2 of the existing buildings that are there. We talked about this in length at the work session. This is a tract of land that was first developed many decades ago. The neighborhoods have grown up around it. The main building, which you see in the center of the aerial, is a former tent manufacturing building facility, 5,000 square feet, concrete block. It has seen better days, but I'm told it is still in pretty good structural shape. They're proposing to renovate that to give it a more residential appearance and fit in more with the church environment and take advantage of its sound condition. Other structures on the property include a very old single-wide mobile home, which is scheduled to be removed anyway, I think as part of the real estate transaction. And then on the corner is an older single-family home but also needs some TLC. They are proposing to renovate that structure and use it for church use, I think mainly as offices, as administrative space. The larger building, 5,000 square feet, they've got some other plans for. There's more options there that they may partition it, but I'll let the pastor address some of those details. In your packet is a site plan that shows the existing buildings, proposed parking lot to go in between. These buildings do not technically require additional parking spaces because they are not larger than the sanctuary space across the street. That is deemed to carry the load. The campus area across the street has more than enough parking. This is more what I would call convenience parking to go with the uses of these buildings. But as you see, it's 2.5 acres, plenty of room for future expansion or other uses. And there's been some discussion about that, but I do not think the church has made some hard decisions on it just yet. Churches often are seen as very compatible in a single-family neighborhood. As long as the magnitude of the use is okay, the site plan fits. In this case, it's not the primary church facility, so the magnitude component, it isn't there. And the site plan for what they're showing here fits pretty much as is. And certainly anything to redevelop or renovate these existing buildings is a plus. Planning Commission has reviewed this. They're recommending approval with 5 conditions. The first one, approval shall be granted for a church usage of the property as a subordinate expansion of the Woodlawn Forest Church of Christ facility located across the street to the east, which shall remain the primary church campus. Uses on the subject property may include a typical single-family residence, church office, Sunday school classrooms, playground, storage, meeting and social rooms, and church gathering space, along with any requisite restrooms and access or support rooms. Cumulative total of all existing and proposed buildings on the property shall not exceed 10,000 square feet heated gross floor area, and we talked about that at the work session. That's about 40% higher than what they are now, which is around 7,000 square feet. So it allows for room for some minor expansion. The existing mobile home and any existing outdoor storage materials shall be removed from the site. Number 3, parking facilities shall meet the same landscaping and lighting requirements of the LDR as other non-residential parking lots. All site lighting shall be directed away from surrounding residential properties. Any unused curb cuts onto Woodlawn shall be entirely removed. And at the work session, we talked about striking that last sentence that dealt with the sidewalks and so forth. So we can remove that. That would be the easiest amendment to do to that condition. Number 4, the entire north property line shall be maintained with a minimum 10-foot wide buffer yard and or 6-foot tall opaque privacy fence and a minimum 10-foot building setback distance. Number 5, lastly, the conditional use approval shall expire after 5 years from the date of approval if no building permit has been issued for any new building or existing building expansion or renovation by that date. So a pretty good window. And these are customary to what we have done with churches and single-family zoning districts. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Council, any questions for Matt? Okay, again, Matt, thank you. This is a public hearing. Anybody that would like to step forward and speak in favor of this request, please do so.
Good evening. I'm Leroy Butler Jr. I'm the minister of the Woodlawn Forest Church of Christ. We have come to request, of course, that you approve the the application. There is, however, a matter that we would like for you to consider in regards to the maximum square footage allowed, which is 10,000 square feet. As far as we've been able to determine through inquiry, there is no maximum square foot in terms of development in an R6. And we kind of feel like we're being handcuffed a little bit there if we decide to do something to expand or extend the square footage on the 2.5 acres. And so what we would really like to see is that we be granted the use and not be restricted in terms of full development of the 2.5 acres. So that would be the best case scenario for us, not having to go through this process all over again if we decide to extend beyond 10,000 square feet. And so we would ask that you would consider that and we not be saddled with the burden of having to go through all of that. 2.5 acres is a good little bit of property there. And so we would respectfully request that we not be held to a 10,000 square feet minimum.
Council, any questions for the pastor?
And all of the conditions, you're in agreement with the rest of the conditions?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And what about the sidewalks?
Sidewalk, you know, the city has paved, as you well know, the sidewalks on Woodlawn all the way to North Forest Street. And there is sidewalk on North Forest Street, at least from Park Avenue all the way back to East Moore. And
Pastor, if I can interrupt you for just a second, we're going to strike that sentence anyway.
Oh, I thought, okay.
We believe we're going to strike that one because, again, Forest Street is obviously in line for vast improvements.
Okay,
And,
good.
we'll be building it then. It'll be the prettiest street in all of Valdosta.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I
The
just
other-
want to make sure we did, we discuss for the matter of records.
Any other questions for the pastor? Pastor,
I don't
thank
have
you.
any questions. I'd just like to say to Minister Buckler, thank you because you did a great access in that area with the apartments and the church, and now you're reaching across. In this area, it's a need, and you do a lot for the children in the community. I myself live in that area, and I have thanked you for so much that you have done in that community. So I am in agreement with what you're asking, that we should allow you to be able to do the things that you're doing, because again, I salute you for what you're doing in that area, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Councilman?
Yeah, and Matt, if you come up, this is in regards to the site, Reverend Butler.
Pastor, stay up here. This will take about
You'll
half
be
a
involved
second.
in this as well. The eliminating any kind of maximums on the building size on the property. I'm sure that there are some, but if it's zoned R6, you may not be asking for really what you want, because there is limitations on the size of a building on an R6 lot.
All right. There is no upward building area limitation in any of our zoning districts other than some of the overlays. R6 is a single-family residential district. If you can get a 9,000 square foot house to fit on an R6 lot, more power to you, but it is possible. So that's why there's no upward limitation. Churches and other institutional uses are conditional use permits. The site plan, future development, all of those things come into play. If the property were half the size, in other words, their entire proposed site plan takes up all of the subject property, then in all likelihood you are looking at the maximum scenario. In this case, you're looking at half of the maximum scenario because you see the whole western half of the property is left open. And that was part of the concern. If you can visualize the 5,000 square foot building in the center, how many more of those buildings could possibly fit, even with parking? Probably 2 or 3 more at least, depending on how you configure it and depending on usage. So that's where the concern stems from. With other churches that have come through conditional use process in single-family zoning, we have done the same thing. We have put an upward limit to give them room to expand if they have a master plan. We try to accommodate that as much as possible. I can think of 2 examples in the past 10 years off the top of my head. One is Crossroads Baptist Church at the corner of Country Club and Eagle Road. They have gone through a long-term building expansion. They had a lot of extra room. They had plans for more buildings. We put an upward limit on them to accommodate, but it was a reasonable limit. The other one I remember is the Episcopal Church on North Patterson Street, directly across from the VSU campus. Again, they had multiple acres, room to expand. They were not quite as sure about what their future expansions would be. So again, they got an upward limit. I would be much more in favor of a much higher number than no number at all because of the configuration of this property. And also remember, like we talked about, if they get to that point, some point way in the future, to change that, you just come through the process. Yep. And then we're dealing with a different site plan, different specifics. Makes for a better review.
Matt, thank you. And Pastor, that's what was discussed at the Tuesday work session, expanding that.
Well, with that in mind, Reverend Butler, as he mentioned, if you could visualize 3, possibly 4 more 5,000 square foot buildings on there, depending on parking requirements, you would be raising that limit to say, instead of 10,000 maximum gross floor area, to say 25 or 30,000 gross floor area. Would that work?
That sounds reasonable to me. That sounds reasonable.
Is that reasonable for you?
I have a question in regards to that as well. Now, it's R6, so I would assume that if we decided at some point to, for example, put some kind of housing on that other end down there,
Sure could.
we would just, I would assume, have to comply with what is normally complied with, building code setbacks, et cetera, for that. And we wouldn't have to necessarily go through a process. It wouldn't be special use, would it?
No.
Or would it?
No, all you'd have to do is just subdivide the lot into however many parcels.
Yeah.
Go pull your permits and build a house.
There you go. Okay, so I think that's very reasonable.
Before we go, I just wanted to bring up, because of the fact we did go through the work, there is an ordinance for the R6 restrictions on land use, the square footage. I know you looked up that ordinance on there to show that there is no restriction. Isn't that what did you have there?
Well, what I'm sorry.
Matt can probably come tell us.
It's Matt, I believe, isn't it, Matt? What he said is what my understanding was in terms of the maximum square footage, et cetera.
Right.
But this being a church, then it comes under some other consideration.
So you really don't have to.
It would be,
you don't have to put
right.
a number figure on there, is what I'm trying to see now.
Right, there is no upward limit automatically in our 6 zoning district, mainly because it's a single-family residential. It would be a limitation on house size. Things that are not a house, like a community center or a church or school or conditional uses, those are always reviewed case by case, and therefore the numbers should be different case by case. But I think the ordinance you're referring to is the LDR section 2-2014-1, table 1. It's all of the residential zoning districts.
Right.
There is no criteria in there for maximum building area, just minimum floor area for a house, which is 800 square feet.
So do you want to put a number figure on it?
Well, we've got a recommendation of a number here. That's subject for discussion. My recommendation to you is if we change the number rather than eliminate the number.
And
So we're going to go up on the number.
we were talking about going to 30,000 gross floor area?
Okay. Minister Butler, you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, he already said that.
Good.
Okay.
Beautiful. Matt, thank you. Reverend, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of this request, knowing that it's going well already? Anybody that would like to speak out against this request? All right. Council, I'll turn it over to you for a kind of complicated motion.
Yes, sir. So we're going to try to get this right. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to approve the request of the applicant for the church usage of the said property with the 5 conditions, with the removal of the verbiage from condition 3, stating extending the sidewalk along the property entire frontage with the North Forest Street connecting to North Forest Street, with the frontage on North Forest Street connecting to North Forest Street crosswalk.
Did you say not adding the sidewalks, ma'am?
Yep, correct.
I couldn't hear you.
Yep, taking that
Okay.
last sentence out, correct.
Okay.
Councilman?
And to remove and to change the verbiage from the condition to read not to exceed greater than 30,000 square foot heated gross floor area. Is that correct?
Good, I have a motion and a second.
Good job.
Any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Unanimous. Congratulations.
Trying to get that right.
Thank you. We're going to now move on to ordinances and resolutions. This is the consideration of an ordinance to establish the Valdosta Citizens Engagement Board. We're going to let Mark Barber, our city manager, present. And this is the second reading of that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. We've spoken of the creation of this Valdosta Police Engagement Board for a while now. As Mayor Matheson said, this is the second reading of the proposal. The Community Engagement Police Board, as presented as a first reading and now as a second reading, I feel represents a solid action in expanding transparency and accountability of the police department to citizens. Not that it's lacking now, but it's an expansion of what we're already doing for our community so they can see inside of our police department. In this effort tonight, I do recommend that the approval of the creation of this police board and also the procedures as outlined as we've discussed previously. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Council, any questions for Mark? None? Mark, thank you. Council, I'll turn it over to you for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ordinance as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, show of hands. Unanimous.
Thank
Mark,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Council.
Secondly, what we have to do along with that is, the membership is made up from a nominee from each of you. I've sent that completed list to each of you earlier, but we do need to take a vote on that, and I will read the names of the nominees, and we'll vote them as a group, since this will be a newly created board for the city of Valdosta. Mayor Matheson's nominee is Lee Henderson, Councilwoman Miller Cody, George Tharp, Councilwoman Tooley, Darren Neal, Councilman Vickers, Lewis Gordon, Councilman Howard, Denise Peters, Councilman Tim Carroll, Kay Reeves, Councilman Andy Gibbs, Terry Ball, and Councilman Ben Norton, Michael Thomas. So those are the nominees we have thus far, and we'll need a motion and a second to adopt that inaugural group of our newly created board.
Mark, thank you. Council.
Y'all can vote on it if you want to. There doesn't need to be a vote.
Right.
Each person gets a nominee.
That's right, it's just one.
All right. I'm still going to turn it over to council for action.
Mayor, make a motion to adopt the nominees.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, show of hands. Council, thank you, and to the people named, thank you.
Thank you. I think this is an exciting new program for us.
Yep. Thank you, Mark. All right, we'll move on to bids, contracts, agreements, and expenditures. Consideration of a request, an RFP and consulting contract for services to perform Phase 2 of our resurveying of the Valdosta Local Historic District, Valdosta Local Historic District. Matt Martin will again present.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. This is not a zoning case, but back in February, we approved a resolution when we applied for Phase 2 grant funding with the state to complete the resurvey of our local historic district. 2 years ago, we had embarked on Phase 1. That was completed last year. And so now we're tasked with Phase 2 so that we can maintain compliance with certified local government status, which is required for cities and counties that do historic preservation. We sent out the RFP proposals to about 50 different folks. We got 3 proposals in. Those were reviewed by the entire Historic Preservation Commission, and they have unanimously selected the best proposal, which is listed there in your packet, and that is for Johnson, Merriman, and Thompson, or otherwise known as JMT. Their proposal for their consulting fee is $43,131, which is within the range of our matching funds and the grant funds together, with actually a little bit of cushion. When we had talked about Phase 1 before, we had promised a cash match not to exceed $30,000, but like just with Phase 1, part of that can be in kind with staff time and other volunteer work, and we contributed more than half of that in Phase 1 as in kind. So it's an upward ceiling. The good news is we're well within that dollar range, and we get our obligations done for the local historic district. And then we talked about this at length at the work session. Then we can move on to phases 3 and 4.
Fantastic. Any questions for Matt? And Matt, I'll again praise you because of that meeting. They praised you on your work in Phase 1 and said they had zero fear of you proceeding on Phase 2 as well, and that was a high praise for your staff.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Council, I'll turn it over to you for action.
Mayor, make a motion to approve this request as presented, and that the company of Johnson, Merriam, and Thompson will be the receiver of these funds.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, show of hands. Thank you, council. It's unanimous. To everybody in attendance tonight, we're going to head on to the citizens to be heard, but I'm going to turn the evening over to our Mayor Pro Tem, Tim Carroll. I have an engagement about 2 blocks away for Lamps Changing Lives Dinner. I've emceed that for probably about 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years. I don't know what. It's an organization dear to my heart, so I'm going to go over there and get that night started, and Tim will finish out the evening. Council, if you'll excuse me. But you don't want to switch in?
I'll stay here. All right, y'all heard the mayor. It's time for citizens to be heard. Anybody would like to come up and address mayor and council, we ask that you state your name and address for the record, and that you limit your time to 3 minutes. Our policy is that you don't direct any comments to council individually or as a whole, or try to engage in conversation, but it is this council's policy that we will follow up with you. Sometimes we'll follow up with you if we can immediately during the meeting or after the meeting. But just to make sure everybody has plenty of time, if y'all would abide by those. And having said that, anyone coming up wishing to be heard, come forward at this time.
Good evening, dignitaries, councilmen. My name is Jennifer Blanc. I will leave my address anonymous because there is an open case involving me as a victim of a crime here in Valdosta, the People versus Mateus Thomas. On March, we are here as taxpayers to alert the council as to exigent circumstances requiring exigent measures to be taken to reduce the amount of crimes taking place in the historic district of Valdosta. Me, myself, I did not grow up in Valdosta. I'm a Chicagoan. I'm a Chicago lawyer before you. And I got here in late 2019, right around the time that COVID hit. So most of us were indoors. I didn't know any of my neighbors. I have grown to love my neighbors now, because on March the 28th, I was confronted by a gunman in the vestibule of my home. As I said, it's an open case, so I will not go into the details of it. But basically, he shot me. He shot me for the purpose of carjacking me. I laid in the hospital for 17 days. I was in a coma for 3 days, 3 of the first days. I had 3 different surgeries. I was struck. 1 bullet hit me in the liver. It exited out the back of my spine. Another bullet went straight through my breast. Fortunately, I wasn't bent over. Went straight through my breast. Another one entered my money-making hand. Right here. A bullet entered here and exited out my wrist. Through all of these surgeries and 4 blood transfusions, and through the grace of God and His mercy, I am standing here before you, still the lawyer from Illinois, the tax-paying citizen of Valdosta. And as a taxpayer, when I came out of the hospital, I was so proud of my neighbors. They galvanized together. They took care of me. I have no family here. Again, didn't know anyone. But what has transpired since I left the hospital and looked at the beauty of the home that I was coming back to, that I'm proud of, is nothing but a series of shootings. There has been 7 shootings since my shooting, all in the historic district, concentrated in front of, this is Professor Ellis. He lives 2 doors down from me, right at Park and Williams. Series of shootings that occurred, and again, there's a litany of them. There's about 7 of them that you should be made aware of. I'm going to take this off for a second because I can't see that well with my glasses fogging up. Between May and June, there were shootings. A shooting that occurred at the sugar mill, 2 cousins exchanging fire. There was a shooting of family members somewhere around college. One was critically wounded. Again, always critically wounded, their gunfire. And in July, there was some sort of drug deal that went bad, and there were 5 men, 4 against 1, just taking shots at one man walking down the street. Where did this happen? In front of the Baptist Church, Park and William Street. In August, right before I was going to head on a plane to go to New York and see my daughters, everybody knows I do not like New York. The night before, I'm getting into my home. I'm in my home, and I'm laying in bed, taking that Sunday cat nap that we all so much love, and I'm shaking out of the bed. I was just lingering in bed. I had already woken up, but I was shaking out of the bed. Why? Because there's a drive-by shooting going on William Street. I was in the back of the house. I heard the sounds. Vroom. I had watched too many movies. Action Jackson, Tom Cruise. I knew that sound. It was the sound of gunfire, people exchanging gunfire. And as it turns out, one of the professors who lives on Park Street, I had his number, Professor Bryan of Spanish at VSU. I called him immediately, and I said, "Did you hear that?" He said, "Yes, I heard it. I'm in the back of the house. I'm moving towards the front." "Okay, I'm outside now. I don't see nothing." I see, oh yes, 3 police cars. The police officers came on the scene, picked up the shell casings, all 14 of them, I was told. I came out the house simultaneously. A police officer greeted me. I said, "What was that? It sounded like a drive-by." He said, "Yes, ma'am, it was a drive-by." He told me that there was a purple car, sedan, and that there was also a black SUV involved. Purple car is a very distinctive-looking car, so that registered in my memory. They proceeded to pick up the shell casings. What transpired later? Nothing, absolutely nothing. There's no visible presence of police. There's no notification, knocking on doors. Only saw one neighbor, actually, that the police knocked on their doors. Now, I'm not here to bash the Valdosta police. We love the Valdosta police, don't we? Because they are very responsive when we call. But unfortunately, there's just been, like I said, a series of these events, and there really has been no intervention, meaningful intervention, to prevent future crimes or to send out a message to the criminals to stop.
Ms. LeBlanc?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I've given you double the time that we allow per citizen. And as you know, that sets precedents, and trust me, there's a lot of folks that like to take advantage of that. If I could ask you to maybe email everybody on council or make direct contact with your council members that represent the district. And obviously, I'm sure Chief Manahan and her crew is very much aware of all this and will help you in any way they can. Has Detective Hancock met with y'all any?
Well, the reason why we're here is because we want a more of an interdisciplinary approach. We need all the departments involved. We need the council to pass resolutions so that we can have a camera, because on Thursday there was another shooting. You know, everybody is very scared. We need a camera at Park and William Street. We'd like to have an emergency resolution passed as to that.
I would, of course, that's not something we could do tonight. However, it's possible, I'm not saying for sure, it is possible that maybe within the budget of the police department, they could do something. But that, again, is something that would have to be discussed, and this is not really the venue to discuss that in. So if you would get with Chief Manahan, also get with our city manager, Mark Barber, and let them all get together and work with you and see what's the best course of action to take.
Okay, we have done some of that. After I was shot, they met with the neighbors and they talked to them about safety and safety measures that they could take, which they were already cognizant of. I spoke with a representative from the office shortly after the shooting on Thursday. Then I learned that there was another shooting on Lee and Park Street, again, where a woman had to drive herself to the hospital after multiple gunshot wounds. And all of this to say that we're very frustrated at the lack of transparency. We don't know gunmen who are walking the street in our neighborhood when they are known to the police. And we also don't see anything being done. So we're here as taxpayers asking for your intervention, you know, because the police department has done what they can.
Yeah, we've got you. And I'm sorry, I'm not, I don't want to be disrespectful, but you've gone way past the normal allotted time that we allow for this. I promise you there will be follow-up, and I encourage you to make contact with your council representative, because they'll be your best point person at this point. But you will have your issues followed up on.
Okay, thank you for allowing us to be on the record.
You bet. Thank you. Is anyone else that'd like to be heard?
Yeah. Can we ask her to just remain and we'll talk with you? Don't leave. We'll talk with you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm John Robinson, 3227 San Julian Circle in Lake Park. I came up here and recently gave a presentation to ask you guys to consider joining with us as far as a partnership with the People Tribune in behalf of asking the federal government for $250 million for progression and development on the south side only in the city of Valdosta. These funds is not for the People Tribune, it will be a request for the city itself, for the city. And we want to team up. I spoke with Mr. Warnock, and I was seen to be ushered from in front of him just for a moment or two. But I want to say this. I live under conditions. And the conditions I live under is I can't plan 10 or 15 years down the road because I got diagnosed with esophageal terminal cancer, and I was given a few months to live, but I'm here in remission right now. I said that to say this. By living under those conditions, I can't look 16 to 15 years down the road, but if this thing returns, I'm doomed within 6 to 8 weeks, they tell me. The same as the people that live in our community living under conditions of poverty, living under conditions of not earning $10,000 a year, where 40% live below poverty and 43% earn less than $10,000 a year. Is something very wrong with that picture. And to be living underneath oppression is the same results as I face. People lose their hope. And if any one of you that's sitting on this board would go down the ramp and deal with the homeless people, you'll find that they got a waiting list for the homeless. Then at the food kitchens, they're overwhelmed. Something is wrong here, very wrong here. People want to paint a picture of a luxurious Valdosta. It is a nice place. I was born here. It's my home. That's why I come up here, because I got grandchildren here. But there is gross unfairness in this city, and we all is aware of that, and we're trying to come together to see if we can do something that can be in a positive manner to make some progression that we can move ahead. People that live below poverty, if any one of you was in the food line down in the soup kitchen, you'll be embarrassed for your friends to see you there. You wouldn't want them to come up and see you standing in a line to get a meal, and therefore, it running you on a stage of being in a hopelessness condition. People that live below poverty and oppression live in a hopeless condition, so they'll throw paper on the street and they'll leave it there because they don't care. We need to restore the dignity and the pride by having something done, and we actually need to join up and team up with us. If not, we are going to form litigation, if any way possible. Can I have at least one more minute? Do the service, just one more. Now, I want to make a request tonight in behalf of the citizens that we get a record of the projects that was done on the south side versus the project that was did on the north side of the city, and the flow of which way the money have been flowing here in this city. I'm asking that for a request from the board. If we can get some approval on that, that we can get that, if we have to get it from public records or whatsoever. But we do is making requests for those. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is any other citizens wishing to be heard? And I will go ahead and tell you in advance, you got 3 minutes.
Nice to see you again, sir.
Good to see you.
And Teresa, and also to you, Councilman. I'm Councillor Terry Burton. I live at 1501 Iola Avenue now. And like everybody else, I've just been listening to this dear lady's horrific story. And it's something we all share in the news every day in America. I just want to throw a thought your way for consideration. One of the many, I used to represent, as I said, 380,000 residents, 4.5 million across London. I had to get the job done, it was a big job. One of the committees I used to chair was the Police Consultative Group. Council members were appointed onto it, the police chief had to be there, some of his officers were there. Church leaders used to attend to it. Community centres, people who run the community centres for different organisations used to be on it. There was about 20 people on it. We would meet once a month. Yeah, so even over in good old London, we get stabbings, stealings, robberies, assaults. Everything that goes on here goes over there. And we used to thresh out the ideas. We needed to know, the police needed to know, they need input, the people need input. You work together, it's a team effort. What are we going to do about it? How can we deal with this issue? And it's a wonderful melting pot. So throw out a consideration for this wonderful city of Valdosta to have something like the Police Consultative Group. If you want more information, you can call me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Is any other citizens wishing to be heard?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to be heard. My name is Melanie Parker, and my address is 422 Connell Road, apartment E4. I am a native Valdostan, and I spent about 20 years in Alaska and graduated from the University of Alaska with a degree in Human Services. I have returned home to see about my family and work in my community. Tonight, I'm here to represent the Valdosta Black Heritage Group, and I serve as the secretary. At Tuesday's work council session, I was really pleased to hear Mayor indicate that he stated that he was in favor of expanding the boundary line south of the local historic district, or LHD. We clearly understand that phases 1 and 2 represent the legally required survey of resources within the local historic district, and that must be done first. But given the fact that the entire South Side Historic District and black neighborhoods of the East Historic District were excluded from the local historic district 40 years ago, we do have the following 2 questions for you or any official that can answer. So will the next phase involve expanding the local historic boundary line south, as Mayor stated he would be in favor of? And will it also include, for example, Macedonia, Valdosta's oldest black heritage church, which is to the west? Also, what would be the estimated start time of that next phase? Lastly, what can Valdosta Black Heritage do to help? Thank you.
If you'll get with Mr. Martin, I'm sure he can connect you up. He's sitting right there behind you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Pearl Chappell. I live at 2008 Carolyn Terrace. And I have so much to say, but I know I'm limited on my time, so I'm not going to say all that I'd like to say, and it's probably not going to come out very nicely because when I'm hurried, I get rash. So, getting right to the point, you guys had a meeting and a decision made on the changing of the name of North Forest Street. And I would like to point out to you that your vote really is null and void for a couple of different reasons. If you go to section 86-81, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't want to read the whole thing on the codes, the city codes, it says, "Council shall consider the changing of a name only upon receipt of all residents of all parcels." So, not some, not the majority, not just the ones that got signatures on it, all. This wasn't done. Mr. Davis was given a list of 279 names and addresses, but did not notify all. I know that for a fact. So, he's missing 107 people, if you go by the numbers that were given in. Number 2, section 86-82B. The city engineer shall verify the actual requisite signatures of all and shall be allowed one signature per parcel. All parcels were not verified, only the ones that were submitted by Mr. Davis, which had signatures, which causes me concern over whether or not that there were only one signature per parcel that was verified. Not saying it wasn't, but if they're not checking all of them, what else was missed? So nonetheless, how could the submittal be deemed complete to give to you to vote on when not all parcels were contacted? All right, section 86-82C, and this is about publishing, and it has to be published a minimum of 2 times. I've looked and tried and looked. I could only find one. I was told it was published twice in the Valdosta Times. I can only find one. I don't know. Not good with computers, maybe I missed it, but I'm just saying, I didn't see it. Lastly, according to the Georgia Sunshine Laws, this should have been put on the agency website, and I couldn't find it. I know there's Ms. Johnson, Mr. McConico, or Ms. Armenta could possibly answer that. Trying to stay brief and to the point, I have to ask the same question as Mr. Davis. Why is changing the name of the street so controversial? I wonder. Could it be that he just really should just go for changing the name of our city, Valdosta? After all, it's named after a plantation. Why are we doing this? I heard these people. There's a lot of things that we need to put our attention on. I know, sir. But really, we need attention put on our mission and our purpose, and that is what you are here for. Put your attention and energy on our mission and our purpose. Help the people. Changing the name of the street?
Ms. Chappell.
That's not.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
If you want to get with staff that did all of this in regards to your questions on the ordinance itself, I would highly encourage you to get with either our city manager or our city engineer, Mr.
I
Pat
sent
Collins.
emails and I sent letters, hot letters that I sent. I never heard a response back, not from one.
Okay.
Okay, that's pretty rude, right there too.
Well, someone will follow up with you.
We'll see.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much. My email is pearlchapel@live.com.
Your name again, ma'am?
Thank you.
Pearl Chapel. 2 P's, 2 L's. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like the citizens to be heard? With that, we'll turn it over to our city manager, Mark Barber, for his report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. Just want to remind you guys about the 9/11 memorial service tomorrow at 10:15 on the historic courthouse lawn. Most of you have that on your calendar. And then on Saturday, September 11th, we're going to have the fire department hosting a 9/11 Memorial 5K run. Before the ceremony awarding those runners, there will be a laying of the wreath on a fire truck in the McKee parking lot where customer service is. So I hope all you guys plan to attend that. And also, I've put your city manager report in front of you for your review. Always feel free with any new information you'd like to see in there. Please let us know, and we'll be happy to do that. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have this evening. Yes, sir.
When we reply back to citizens who come up with, is there any way they do it, like email that you copy the mayor and council?
Yeah, and what we normally do is I'll put it before you at the next meeting, what we've all done, because sometimes it takes that 2-week time frame to get everything, but I'll email you, and we'll continue to put it in front of your plates or your stations every 2 weeks as well.
I'm just saying, when you reply back to them, let them know.
Right.
Acknowledge that they got to be working on this copy or something.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Any other questions?
It's one question, and I think I'm in the right place asking this right now. But Mark, about 2 months ago, I did ask that you get with the city attorney and I try to come up with some kind of information to give to our citizens about the funding, the ARPA fund, the CARES fund. And I just wondering, had y'all kind of looked into that or doing something, because there's a lot of questions coming from the citizens about that. And the only thing, we tell them is we just working on it.
Right.
So I think that will alleviate a lot of these questions of that just alleviate a lot of unwarranted questions.
Right, absolutely, because to be honest with you, Council, I think that's a great point, Councilwoman Tooley. If I didn't work here, I would never believe that we have no rules on how to spend money that's been designated to the city. I would say y'all are not being truthful with me. But that's the honest truth, is we're still waiting, and the majority of you at GMA, you heard the same thing I heard. Do not disperse the money until you get the final regulations. We're still awaiting the final regulations as of today. We're trying to get some input as to when we might receive those final regulations. We depend heavily on Georgia Municipal Association for that. They're in the same boat we are. They're working hard to get us that information. But quite honestly, Councilwoman, that information is not there. It's basically for economic development, premium pay for employees, infrastructure. Those are the four broad categories that we do know. When you get into more detail than that, there's no detail to help you navigate through it as of yet. So we're waiting, but I understand your point, because like I said, if I didn't work here, I'd be saying you are not telling me the absolute truth, but that is just the truth of the matter with this.
Okay, well, I understand, and one of the questions too, when you say about infrastructure too, that would be one thing I wish we could clear up with them, kind of explain to them what the bill says infrastructure is. Is it just about the roads? Is it just about sewer? Is it just about, I think I read it somewhere.
Most of it is mostly about sanitary sewer. And water as well, that side of the utility side of it, because, it's got to be prevention of COVID. So you've got to have those services for washing your hands, bathing, showering, those type of things. So the majority of that what I've seen is going to center around provision of water and sanitary sewer.
That's the first money, because there is a infrastructure money coming down for
There's another, that's right.
And it is really considered more on that. That's why one of the things that keep coming up, and I wish we could explain to them that,
Right, and I think your point is very well taken. I think that the confusing part, do you know how many, there's pots of money out there that folks are really getting confused. Yes, we got our local ARP allocation, but guess what? We can go to the state now and also pull from some of their allocation that Governor Kemp has allowed us to do. So there's another pot of money. You brought up the infrastructure bill that's coming down. There's another pot of money. So you're right. It does get very confusing, and I understand why those questions from citizens. But, once again, we don't have those final regulations, and we certainly don't want to violate any kind of federal, because this money will be coming from the federal treasury, and we don't want to violate, any type of disbursement policy that they're giving us. Because we really want to be good stewards of this and prove, hey, we appreciate this money you've given us, and we're going to show you we're going to spend it how you meant for it to be spent.
I have one question. Are you aware if any other cities in our surrounding areas have used any of their money?
Not that I know of, not that I know of. I do know City of Macon has done some things, but the discussion, or the consolidated government, but I have heard that perhaps they're in violation already of some of the things they've already paid with their money.
If it helps, I had a long conversation with a member of the GM18 earlier today, and they expressed that cities all over Georgia are in the same boat.
Yeah.
Still really kind of waiting to get the details, because if you go and spend the money and don't account for it properly, and it's not eventually, yes, you can do it that way, you're going to have to give the money back. And I don't think anybody wants to be in that position.
How much money are we talking about that we have?
I didn't hear
How
you.
much money do we have that we don't receive that we haven't spent?
Right, our total allocation is a little over $16 million. We got half in June, and we'll get the half next fiscal year. So we've got 8.2, something like that we've got back in June.
How much of that we have spent, and how much?
We've spent a portion of that for premium pay. We felt comfortable doing the premium pay for our employees, but what we did, the majority even came from the CARES Act funding that we got back in September, just to be sure we weren't violating the ARP. Just in case we were, it would just have to be a small amount we would have to pay back. So we have spent a portion of that $8 million for our employees who worked during COVID and continue to work during COVID.
The only thing I was just asking is just that we could make some kind of statement in there, just saying that the city has received some money. The city is right now still looking at some of the regulations. The city do not want to do just something, because the question is, we got the money. They're saying, well, just so many.
I understand. It's so frustrating. I'm absolutely with you. I'm as frustrated as you are with it, because I think you guys have some good ideas for some projects that will push forward with this funding. It's just, we're at a standstill, to be honest with you. And also with the executive order, I think Mr. Robinson was referring to, we're still very eager to make that agreement, but at the same time, we're waiting on some additional information so we know how to put together a good agreement and a partnership with Mr. Robinson. Absolutely, that is still on the table. But again, that process has not finished as well either at the federal level.
One other thing I want to ask you.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a Valdosta Transit, right?
We have Valdosta On Demand, yes, ma'am.
Is there any kind of way that we could explain to the citizens about it? You will not know how often I hear that they tell us about our transit. I say, well, there's only so much how the city can do. It's your transit. It's my understanding it's not the Valdosta. I mean, it's named after the Valdosta Transit. It's just some confusion in there it's like why our regulations, or why we can't do certain things, why we can't have the drivers do this, why we can't have, what was it about, the way they drive, what they dress like, what they're doing, the time, and the setting the timings in different places and different things like that. It's just so many questions, and I don't know if we need to give them a little bit, some more kind of explanation about.
Sure, I can give that to distribute to your constituents anytime we've got information on that. It is Valdosta On Demand. The city of Valdosta pays for that service, so it is a city of Valdosta service to our citizens. Currently, we're over 300, how many rides per day, Richard?
Between 275 and 320.
Yeah, so we're pushing 300 rides a day. We've got 7,500 folks signed up on the app to ride. So it's been very popular, but I hear what you're saying. We do contract through a third party. It's not a physical city department here like Public Works, although Richard Hardy, our deputy city manager, does head that up as our transit director. But we can discuss things. But as far as your timing and all that you mentioned, Councilman, that's already built in because that's the federal dollars we received. We can't control that to the next round of federal dollars we get. So a lot of the time and things like that, we can't expand it because that's all the dollars we have right now. But we can redo that as the fiscal years come through because, as you know, the CARES Act, so far we have not had to really put forth funding for it because the CARES Act has covered us for the last 2 years. But all of those things were set on the original contract. And so we've got our allocated dollars from the federal government, and that's how we have to stay within that dollar because we don't have another source at the moment to increase that. But you're right, it's third party, but no one here should consider it not about City of Valdosta service because we will have to pay for it eventually after all this funding is over with. Yes, sir.
Also, on the hours that we operate, that's written in the grant, correct?
Right now it is.
Receive from the grant.
That's right.
Tell us what hours we can operate.
Right, so everything's based on hours driven. The whole federal grant system is hours driven. So right now, we've got to respect that. And we knew that going into it, those of us that did serve on this committee, is that we really felt it was going to be popular, and the next round of federal dollars, we were going to probably expand that because we felt it was going to be popular as it is now. So to answer your question, yes, it is the City of Valdosta service, and no one should think otherwise.
I just wish you would put it in the paper so it would be known a little bit more.
Well, and I'll get you some things you can give to your constituents as they ask you, and let you distribute that.
I'll just tell the story.
Tell our story. That's what Mr. Vickers says, tell your own story.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Barber.
Thank you.
Mr. Barber.
Now we're at that point for council members to be heard. Is there any members of council that wish to make statements?
I myself would like to make one, sir. To our mayor, our city manager, our deputy city managers, all my city councilmen, the city itself, thank you for being there for me when I lost my nephew 1 week. And before I could bury my nephew, my sister died the day before we buried him. And you all were great support. Yes, it hurts, but I have accepted it that my sister lived to be 94 years old. So that we have a lot to be thankful for. But again, I just want to say to the city, you are my family. And I thank you for your prayers and your support. Continue to pray for us because it does hurt. If you all that really know me, know everything we've done, I would always say, allow me to fix my sister her plate if we had some extra food. So that's kind of hurting, the fact that you can't do it. And I'm so used to riding by, checking on her 3 and 4 times a week. So again, we say thank you, continue to pray for us, and may God bid each one of you with greatness for your support to me and my family. Thank you.
Any other council members?
Yeah, I just want to make an announcement that Eric Howard came up with a great idea, and me and him spoke about it. If you mark your calendars for October the 9th at 3 p.m., we're going to host a cornhole tournament at the Georgia Beer. They're going to have a food truck on hand. They'll have music at 6:30. It will be me and Eric Howard playing against 2 commissioners, and then it'll be Mark and Mayor playing against Bill Slaughter and then it's going to be 4 police officers playing against 4 firemen. And all the proceeds is going to go to the fund that's been set up for the Valdosta First Responder Fund to help put towards the ones that got injured in that accident we recently had a few weeks ago. So this will be fun. It's going to be basically in Georgia Beer is going to be able to proceed of their money towards the fund, and the food truck's going to do as well, and the donations can be made, so it's going to be a fun event, and Eric and Power are looking forward to bringing back the trophies.
Well, I just have one question.
As we always do.
I have one
Basketball, everything.
I have one question of you, Councilman. I mean, did I make you mad? I was originally part of that group. Now, correct me if I'm not wrong, Councilman Howard. How did I get booted off of the team? Have you ever seen me play cornhole?
I haven't. I heard, but when Andy came on, he said he wanted to go jump.
Ooh.
I ain't never said anything.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I think that... No. Actually, what I think is that Mr. Barber and I should have a throwdown. And whoever wins the throwdown is on the team. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
All right.
All right, 3 o'clock.
I got to do it before 3 o'clock. We start at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock is when we're going to be there. At 3:30, we're actually going to usually start.
Oh, okay, so 3 o'clock we'll have our throwdown. All right, all right.
I will. Ashton's actually going to send one out and post it on Facebook and do all that as well. So, Ashton, could you send one to the...
I want you to stay in charge. Fire him. All right, any other council comments?
Also on that day, community is gonna have a thing at Scott Park, where I think we're gonna Parks and Rec gonna do a movie later on that afternoon, and the community is gonna also mark our keep we're gonna have, I wanna think, Chief, did we discuss that last month? About the
Right now, it's gonna be 10 to 2.
10 to 2?
We're gonna have Kona Ice, hamburgers, hot dogs, and for the citizens. It's national. We haven't finalized everything yet.
Right. And September the 30th, Red Cross is gonna be doing a blood drive here at City Hall Annex. We're trying to get as many people to come and donate. We're trying to do something with the Civil Sale Foundation, so many people come out, respond back to their email and pass the word out.
Sounds good.
Your comment, when you use Scott Park, make sure you do that on yourself. Thank you.
So I talk to
All right, if I can get a motion. Second, all in favor, say aye. We are adjourned.